Welcome to Let Me Talk to My Customer. This is our podcast, Counts Business Consulting. I'm your host, Chad Counts, along with my co-host, Rich Tyler. Rich, how are you doing this morning?
Doing great.
Excellent. For those of you who are following along with us, we appreciate you for joining us in either audio or video format. Please follow and subscribe to the podcast, whether that be on iTunes or Spotify. And if you want to leave a review, that would be great as well. So we hope to hear from you, and we hope you're enjoying the content we're providing each Monday morning. And as always, you can reach us for comment or support or services at countsbusinessconsulting.com, along with Facebook, Counts Business Consulting. We're easy to get a hold of there. So we got a great episode for you this week. And before we jump into that, I did want to highlight some upcoming opportunities we have to provide services for you. We're going to be providing a sales training series on closing starting, August 25th, and that will be available from Eastern to Pacific time zone at 7 a.m., wherever you're at. It's going to be a 4-week series specifically on closing that Rich or I are going to be providing for you, and please reach out to us to sign up for that. We'll also have a beginner or new salesperson training that's going to be available on either the 26th or the 27th, starting the 26th or 27th of August and continuing for 4 weeks. So please see us for that. We will be promoting that and announcing that as we go forward. We've continued to have great success during this pandemic, set a lot of sales records and being able to see a lot of companies progress forward. So hopefully we can share more of that training and more of that expertise that we're demonstrating with you guys out there. So thanks for being with us. This week's episode, we get to turn our attention to dealing with failure and anger is going to be our subject matter for today. And to the extent that those really make a dent on us as salespeople, us as customer service representatives, and how they affect us from being able to perform at our absolute best. It doesn't necessarily have to be failure that's specific to our job as salespeople. It doesn't necessarily have to be dealing with anger in our direct job here, but how those two thoughts, feelings, or experiences tend to permeate our performance and tend to impact us as people, whether that be internally in our company or how we display that to customers. So the big area that we're really going to target and key in on is how anger and failure affect our ability to be present and to be attentive and execute our technique, to execute our directives, and achieve our goals in the present. So I'm going to bring Rich in here, and we're going to talk starting out about what are some of the main ways that you see salespeople's performance impacted when they're not present. And so that can be anything from they've got a sick family member to they're building a house and they're stressed and they got all these other, it can be really anything. And if there is anything particular to if there's been some anger or failure that they are thinking about or dealing with, that's great too. But ultimately, when you work with salespeople week in and week out, the weeks that they're tending to struggle with just attending to the call, hearing a customer saying what their needs are, anything like that, how do you see that lack of presence displayed in their performance?
I think it displays itself in a lot of different areas. I mean, just the first one that I think is most apparent is their energy and tone on the call, the way that they deal with their customers. And those type of things usually tend to escalate, I know, throughout the day. I know if it starts off bad, it's only going to get worse by the time 5 o'clock rolls around.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So, I mean, from a starting point, it can be catastrophic if we're starting our day with the fruits of failure, anger, or just not being present. And also, if something occurs during the day, or we get some sort of announcement, or just something happens in the middle of our day, a lot of times one of the most effective things I think you do and we do on our trainings is all of a sudden we give them a 30-minute stopgap here. Get it out of their system, spew it, get rid of it, because they're already thinking about it. They're already consumed about it. Their searches are taking a dive. Their close rate's taking a dive. Okay, let's exercise this problem. Let's get it out there. Not saying we're going to solve it, but at least if we can get it vented, right? We can let off that steam.
Yeah,
We have the ability then to come back and show more progress, right?
for sure.
So from there, being present, what impact do you see? So you mentioned tone and just their overall presentation on a call and how that tends to erode performance over time. Do you see anything numerically in a shift in performance numbers that kind of indicate either lack of engagement, fatigue, or any of those lack of presence?
Sure. I mean, just some of those things would be like the number of quotes they're generating, the number of work orders that are being generated during the day. I mean, not to mention dollar amount, you know?
Yeah, it tends to show up somewhere in their pipeline, right? Either it can be across the board and all of a sudden our close rate and our activity level takes a dip. Or sometimes it seems like if there's something festering about a particular issue, you know, maybe they had a bad warranty claim or something like that, you might see specific areas take a big hit, more so than across the board if there's something particularly that they're dealing with in terms of frustration or anything like that.
I was just thinking, I know in the case of bad salespeople, it could be like just even trying to avoid phone calls. So like you'll see it on their phone, you know, manifest that they're taking a third less calls than anybody else, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so moving from just overall being present and needing that, one of the main areas that salespeople have to really target and deal with, and we all have this challenge just because we're human and these things happen, and that's fighting anger, right? So not coming into work or not caring about our duties solely out of an anger response. And just like I was saying before, this doesn't necessarily have to be anger that's directed at work or at customers or at something that's happened here. But that said, anger tends to be this desire to fix or resolve something. And it tends to be past oriented. It tends to be something that forces you're angry at something that has happened, right? And so you're wanting to have some sort of correction or retribution or justice or anything like that. The problem with that is, while that's I think we can all empathize with that feeling, and we've all been there at different points, when we're not in that state, we see how little our anger actually achieves, right? And that it doesn't change the past. The past is immutable. It's unchangeable. So when we're dealing with that, specifically, Rich, when you're seeing salespeople that are dealing with some sort of anger, or they've had some sort of problem come up, and let's keep it maybe a little more specific to just selling. You know, when you get them on a call and you can tell they're angry about something, you know, how capable are you to focus on the day at hand? How capable are they at focusing on their sales for the day or their calls or their technique?
Yeah, they're just not able to. I mean, it's like nothing else can really be talked about until, like you said, a lot of times they're just given the space to vent. So I'm just thinking of the most recent examples.
Yeah.
And
How about how often do you think across your sales field that you're training with, is this something you deal with?
It's something we deal with.
At least monthly, right? At least
Yeah.
monthly, somewhere in the pipeline, we're really trying to help somebody move past whatever it is that they're
Yeah.
angry or frustrated about.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I would say at some point, and pretty much, it's not always reoccurring, but I think most people at some point have to work through something.
Well, and let's give a specific example here. We've worked with enough companies, we've seen commissions change. And I don't know that we've ever seen, I would never describe a sales staff as being happy that their commission structure has changed. They're not always angry, but typically collectively as a staff, how do we approach or how do we deal with even anticipating that there's going to be frustration, there's going to be anger, or there's going to be disappointment and something that's changed internally in the company?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing is not letting it be an elephant in the room. So making sure that it's addressed, that everybody's had their say to be able to vocalize what it is that they're thinking and feeling.
Right. We have to remove this barrier from some form or fashion, right? And that can either be for forgiveness or it can be acceptance on either end, right? On the commission side, I don't know how much forgiveness is the right word, but definitely acceptance. I mean, you can vent that you're not happy this is happening, and I want to hear that. I want them to know that that's understood. And I also want them to hear from a company perspective, and this is not just in our sector. I would say commission structures are reevaluated and changed at least annually in most sales organizations. And that's a factor of success. If you're a successful salesperson, the scale and the scope of your commission will be reevaluated because we want to keep the same, sorry, not even the same. We want to keep an advancing and progressing level of performance. We don't ever want to get to a point where the commission allows us to just be satisfied, right? And so there needs to be this natural tension and drive within sales pay. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes you can do salary-based pay, and for certain salespeople, they have that internal mechanism that they're always going to be charging and advancing and aggressing, and that's great. So they don't necessarily need that. However, that's far and away fewer than the norm, right? That's definitely not the norm. The other thing with anger or any sort of frustration that I want to point out here is it's equally punishing. It's punishing for the person who is angry, and it's punishing for anybody who's on the receiving end of dealing with somebody who's in a state of frustration or anger, right? You're not able to serve them. And so while that might feel good in the moment to be angry, have that desire to fix or resolve, it also prevents you from moving forward. It doesn't actually solve anything in itself. So forgiveness is the other side of that. And there is a part for those salespeople that are out there. And it could be a sales manager. It could be a company. It could be a vendor. It could be any number of things. Any sort of anger towards something like that, you are giving power to whatever it was that made you angry. Okay, so it's important that you understand that whether through acceptance or forgiveness, I know everybody doesn't necessarily love forgiveness. For me personally, I don't want to let that weigh on my life. I don't want to let that weigh on my performance. And so whether I get what I'm looking for from the other person or from the incident or not, I want to be able to set that free and loose because I don't want that to be what paints my life. I don't want that to be what paints my performance. Mm-hmm. All right. Moving from anger, and lastly, failure. Failure is probably a more even experience for everybody. If you are a salesperson, you've experienced failure. You experience failure on a daily basis, right? Sales is probably the most similar towards being a hitter in baseball as any other occupation, right? You're going to go up there, you're going to fail more. Depending on the yard, this is a little bit different, but it's not rare for a salesperson to fail 7 out of 10 times, right, Rich? I mean, at least in the sense of I had 10 opportunities, I only sold 3, right? That's a very common occurrence. Even if you typically close 50%, you're going to run into those days where you're just not on, you're not hitting the results, you're not hitting your stride where you want. So how do you see failure or dealing with failure manifest itself, or maybe a fear of failure, trying to fight future failure? How do you see that manifest itself in salespeople's performance?
Trying to fight future failure.
Well, I mean, that dealing with failure can be a sense something you're dealing with in the present, but I think a lot of people will see that manifest in trying to avoid future mistakes.
Right.
So focus becomes really, hey, I don't want to.
There's the, yeah, sure. I mean, there's the classic of, you know, if you've been burned by a big engine that you sold, you know, and it came back in the first, you know, 45 days, then maybe you're probably going to be a lot less likely to sell it next time, right?
Right.
That kind of fighting future failure, I think we come across all the time. And then when we find out, when we're looking, you know, we're listening to the calls and we're looking at the screen and we say, well, hey, why didn't we offer this?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, there definitely are plenty of sales staff, and I would say at least half of the sales staffs we come across have some sort of policy that's rooted in avoiding failure, right? And not about pursuing success or anything like that. So you're exactly right. We've seen companies that you cannot warranty a diesel engine. What? Why would that be? We've seen companies where you can't put a warranty on a brokered part. What? Why would that be? Or you can't sell parts over 100,000 miles. You know, we have these different limitations that are designed to cut out failures, and certainly they will, right? You will never have that sense of failure on any of those components. But the other side of what you're cutting out is what, Rich?
Opportunity.
Yeah, any amount of opportunity or success that would be gained. And in most cases, when you look at the ledger between how much success did I achieve, how much failure did I experience, the success side is far greater on most of these. So from a managerial and owner and policy standpoint, you've got to be aware that's fighting failure with policy. Trying to prevent any mistakes can also prevent a lot of successes. So deal with the exceptions, right? It's always better to deal with the exceptions. They're frustrating, they're annoying when they happen. At the same time, that allows you to be more opportunistic. It allows you to provide more value to your customers because you're creating a wider range of opportunities in which you can serve your customer. Now that said, moving from a company standpoint to a salesperson standpoint, how do you see either a fear of failure or dealing with failure impact salespeople directly?
I think, like we mentioned, they're gonna be prone towards limiting their opportunities. That in itself is going to just hurt their overall potential.
Their offer rate, right? I would think tremendously, and that really tends to show up at least in two areas: the frequency with which they offer warranty, and the frequency with which they offered brokered. Rich, how often have you heard salespeople say, "Oh, I can't buy anything from anywhere; their parts are all junk"?
Right, all the time.
All the time.
Everybody thinks everybody else's parts are junk.
Yeah, and so there's this prevailing sense that I guess only at our facility.
Right, exactly.
Only at our facility. We all buy from the same auction. We all buy from the same source, but only our facility doesn't send out junk or doesn't put out junk.
It's nice that there's that pride that people tend to take in their yard, but
I have also seen internally at companies, sometimes with either multiple sites or maybe with certain vendors that they now have multiple sites, they're skittish to order from certain locations because of a sense of either I can't get stuff processed in time or I can't get things communicated in a manner that I need, or even ordering from other salespeople. I try to get this from them, but they don't update me on a tracking number. They don't give me any follow-up or any information. So I think there's salespeople, even though we don't like sales policies to become dealing solely with a singular problem that happened, and so then we make it a policy to never let anything like that happen again. I want to caution salespeople from that same mentality. Yes, you've had problems with so-and-so. Yes, you might have had a bad warranty experience here. Yes, you might have had a problem from this yard or vendor. Tell me you're perfect, right? I mean, we all make mistakes. So I want to make sure you're thoughtful in how often these mistakes are happening, because the human brain works in a way that it's designed to prevent us from repeating failures in the future. So there's a study from the University of Washington, I believe it's Gottman, on failure negative relationships. And it takes 5 positive interactions to every 1 negative interaction in order for us to view a relationship as positive. Okay. So especially on your intermittent experiences with brokering, with warranty or things like that, you would have to sell 5 warranties that you have good experience for every 1 warranty you have a problem with. Or you have to have 5 good brokered experiences for every 1 brokered failure that you have. And if you're not in that state, you're going to have a negative perception of those opportunities when really you shouldn't. Really, they're failing at the same rate that we are. Most companies that we see, Rich, tend to have a credit rate somewhere between 15 to 20%, right? So we're all flirting with that line of 1 in 5. We're going to have this 1 in 5 where there's problems or things are coming back. Part of that is core values coming back and things like that. Us being able to stay optimistic, us to be able to anticipate solutions, be able to anticipate solving and helping our customer is critical. And so you almost have to intentionally battle this mindset of failure, okay? So whether this is internalized or whether this is externalized, the resolve for failure is this. Failure is not a person. Failure is not a company. Failure is an event. Okay, it is an event. It's something that happens. It is not something that keeps a company or a warranty or a customer or a salesperson isn't a failure overall. That is not the right way to view that, okay? And if you constantly put yourself in that mindset, if you put others in that mindset, it's really going to limit your future potential and growth. So accept responsibility. There might have been again, just like we were talking about with anger. What's happened is in the past. So you allowing that to affect how you view that person going forward is basically guaranteeing that failure coming forward. So you need to respect that failure is an event. It's not something that will always happen or always will be. So you accept responsibility for your future. Otherwise, you're going to repeat your past, okay? You may have failed on occasion. Other people may have failed you, but today is a new day. And that's very important as a salesperson. When I come in each day, I want to have that new mindset. I'm here. The world is my oyster. Anything is possible. I might have misexecuted here, but on this call, but each call is a new call, right? I was a goalie in soccer, and that always had to be your mentality. You're going to give up goals. But if I'm sitting there thinking about the goal I just gave up, I'm not going to be at my best in defending what's to come, sure. Right? So there's this duty with failure that you accept it. It's an event. It happened. I have the ability to learn from it and change going forward. Zig Ziglar has brought a lot of this to my mind, and he has this phrase that I love. And to me, this is the sales mantra, and this is where we need to live. This is where we want to be present. This is where we make our bones. If there is hope in the future, then there is power in the present. Okay? So if there is hope for my future opportunities and the things that are to come, then there is power for me today. There is power for me in this call. There is power for me in achieving these objectives today. So we've kind of run the gamut here in terms of talking about being present, talking about anger, talking about failure. And you can just feel how much more power there is in this mantra of having hope in your future, battling to have hope in your future, because we don't always have that. There's days we come in, we're not hopeful, right? We're not, and if we're not hopeful for the future, I've yet to meet anybody that isn't hopeful for the future that's able to be hopeful right now in the present. Mm-hmm. Right? Those two are mutually exclusive. If you want to be hopeful in the present, you have to have hope that good things are to come. Okay. Anger robs you from being present. It robs you from doing your best. And fear of failure is the same way. It will rob you from being positive. It'll rob you from being optimistic. You start anticipating problems and prevent your offering instead of anticipating solutions and anticipating success and being optimistic, being aggressive, opportunistic, and trying to prevent or present options for your customer to serve them. So if nothing else, Rich, let me bring you back in here for this and then we'll close. That attribute that we talk about for sales in terms of they might struggle with technique, they might struggle with this, that, or the other, but how much power is there in a salesperson that is just relentlessly aggressive and relentlessly optimistic?
There's enormous power there, enormous power.
And where
they could do everything, they could do everything wrong, but if they are aggressive and opportunistic, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, it just gives, they start from a place where they're not saying no. And so they automatically start with, let's say our typical salesperson says no 30% of the time, 40, 50% of the time. They're starting just from that mentality alone. They're starting with 30% more opportunity, 50% more opportunity. And that makes a world of difference in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year. So I want to encourage you. Dealing with failure and anger. I mean, we've done the mental game and we've done some topics that are about this, but specifically these two can stunt your growth. Okay? Don't let those things define who you are now and where you're going. You're headed for great things. We were fearful. We had things we were dealing with at the front of this pandemic. And all of a sudden, once we released those and we started pursuing the opportunities that were there, Rich and I have had much better success, right? The companies we're working with are having much better success. None of us are excited about coronavirus. We're still dealing with it at different levels of anger, frustration, failure, whatever. But that said, that doesn't change. And we would say this on our calls. Whatever happens, whatever situation your customer in, whatever situation you're in, your customer has a call today. You have an opportunity to do your best to serve them, provide them excellent service today. And that's all you can do. Focus on what you can control, bring that opportunistic and optimistic attitude, and be grateful for the opportunities you have. Be grateful for serving your customers and look for ways to serve them as opposed for looking for ways that we might fail or struggle. So excellent. Well, we appreciate you all being with us today. We love working on things like this. We really believe that who you are, how you present yourself, how you prepare for your day are some of the biggest keys to success that anyone can have. If you feel like amongst your staff, amongst your team, these are things you struggle with, that you don't naturally carry this in your culture, you don't naturally carry this in your company, let Rich and I bring that to bear. We do that through our managed sales services, and we do that through our one-on-one sales training. These are available online to anybody in the world, anywhere in the world, that we can bring this expertise and we can bring our history of success for you. We can see your profit grow in warranty and brokered and anywhere that you need, as well as in stock. But we specifically take pride in increasing your brokered and warranty profit for sure. We'd love to be a part of your team. We're grateful for all the companies we get to work with and the teams that we're a part of now. Please find us on countsbusinessconsulting.com or Facebook at Counts Business Consulting. Thanks for joining us. Rich, thanks for being with us.
Thanks again to all of our listeners and now our viewers. And as always, keep your feedback coming. We love your comments and suggestions.
Excellent. If there is hope in the future, there's power in the present. So go and make some hope for today and bring that power to bear. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.